We all get dumb ideas from time to time. I once wasted an entire evening designing a rocking chair that rocked side to side. But our dumbest ideas are usually reserved for that deep place inside our heads where we store our shame. Because giving voice to some ideas can actually put others at risk. And that's what this video is about. An idea so bad that it can literally cost someone an arm and a leg. Before you remind me that the internet is full of dumb ideas, so why should I waste my time on this one? Let me point out that this particular one has been posted in my comments to my videos many times over the years, including twice just this past week. Now, just to be clear, I'm not calling the people who suggested doing this dumb. They probably don't use a table saw and have no way of knowing how bad the idea is, but it's my job to teach you. There are actually two parts to this bad idea, but they both seek to do the same thing: to avoid getting injured by a kickback that might shoot a piece of wood back at you. This is a relatively minor example from a while ago, but it did go through the wall behind the saw. Larger workpieces have caused severe injuries and even death, so naturally there is reason for concern. And almost without fail, every time the subject of kickback comes up in a video, I'll get comments suggesting one of two potential solutions, which will almost certainly make the problem worse and could even cost someone their fingers or more. The first is to stand on the opposite side of the fence, so your body is well out of the path of the workpiece. And the other, shockingly common suggestion, is to stand on the opposite side of the table saw so that you're pulling the workpiece toward you across the blade instead of pushing it through the blade. Let's take that second one first, because I've heard that more times than I can count. I'm removing the blade guard partly so you can get a better view of what I'm doing, but this will factor into our discussion in a few minutes. To understand why this is a bad idea, you have to know how a rip cut is typically made. The board is being pushed in two directions: forward into the blade, of course, but I'm also applying side or lateral pressure with my left hand to keep the workpiece against the fence. That lateral pressure has to remain consistent throughout the cut. You can't just push the wood forward. You have to guide it with both hands. Now imagine cutting from the opposite side of the saw. I'd have to lean and reach over the blade to pull the piece toward me, and I'd have to reach around the blade to apply that lateral pressure against the fence. I can't apply pressure on this side of the blade because that might force the freshly cut kerf to pinch against the blade and cause the very kickback I'm trying to avoid. Does that look safe to you? Some suggest using a feather board so you don't have to apply lateral pressure toward the fence with your hand. And they imagine some sort of hooking device so you don't have to reach over the blade and you can just pull it toward you through the cut. I suppose this makes a little bit of sense in theory, but not in actual practice, because few workpieces are this small. Notice how a longer workpiece is ripped. The bulk of the board starts out hanging off the saw alongside your body as it's gradually fed forward. How would you support it if you stood on the other side of the saw and let it hang off the opposite side from you? And how long would your pulling hook have to be to do that? It's not only impractical, it's awkward. And awkward cuts quickly become dangerous cuts. This idea becomes virtually impossible when you start cutting even relatively small plywood panels. Even with a roller stand to support it, how do you guide the panel through the blade and keep it against the fence without telescopic arms? If a kickback were to occur, the risk of pulling your hands into the blade would be far more concerning on that side of the saw than the risk of the workpiece hitting you on this side of the saw, in my opinion. Now, what about standing on the opposite side of the rip fence? Well, believe it or not, some folks insist that this is the proper way to make a cut, and they chastise me for not teaching it that way. I can only imagine that these individuals have never used a table saw before, because I can imagine few things as awkward as cutting from the opposite side of the fence, especially as you reach to apply that necessary lateral pressure. Depending on how wide the board is, you could be leaning quite a bit. That's not just uncomfortable, it's unstable. Now maybe they imagine a feather board, again applying lateral pressure for you while you use just your left hand to push the workpiece forward and through the cut. That looks good, right? But again, it's only possible with small workpieces. Longer workpieces require an awkward two-hand feed, and forget about cutting any plywood from that side of the fence. It just wouldn't be possible. If you want to avoid kickback, These aren't the proper ways to do it. Seriously, those sort of things can get you hurt. And they're unnecessary because all you need is already at your disposal. If you use your blade guard, it has a built-in splitter that will prevent the wood from pinching or wedging against the blade and prevent virtually all kickbacks. If you don't have a blade guard, or you're one of the people that refuses to use one, a riving knife or even a homemade splitter can provide similar anti-kickback protection. If you still worry about something striking you, you can position your body out of the direct path of the blade without changing the side of the saw or the side of the fence that you're standing on. Table saws can be safe and valuable tools if you use them properly. I hope this video clears up at least some of the misunderstandings out there.